Hi, everyone, and welcome to One Art's first reading in the brand new One Art reading series. Please note that these readings are being recorded and will be uploaded to One Art's newly created YouTube channel. A few notes before I welcome our featured readers, Donna Hilbert, Bonnie Proudfoot, and Tamara Madison. We're joined by One Art's consulting editor, Louisa Schneidman.
Hello.
The creation of this reading series is part of my ongoing efforts to build positive spaces in the literary community. I hope to become the kind of facilitator that I've seen modeled by impressive members of the literary and arts communities. I'll refrain from naming names because I could go on for quite a while. Thinking about this beforehand, I thought that Heraclitus would remind us that we are always in a state of becoming. We are, all of us, forever workshopping ourselves towards a new and hopefully improved future self. And this is where I stop myself from going down any number of rabbit holes. The takeaway I want to emphasize is how much I value the One Art community, our contributors, our readers, and those who appreciate the type of work that I aim to platform. Much gratitude to all of you who have already donated, as well as those who plan to do so in the future. Donations can be made at oneartpoetry.com/donations. I will also drop a link in the chat. After our featured readers take the stage, I'll say a few words of thanks and mention upcoming One Art events, both workshops and readings for the next couple months. As a reminder, please keep your mics muted during the readings. And without further ado, let me introduce the first of our wonderful readers. So we have with us Donna Hilbert. Donna's latest book is Threnody, published by Moontide Press in 2022. Enormous Blue Umbrella is forthcoming from Moontide in early 2025. Donna's work has appeared in numerous journals and broadcasts, including Cultural Daily, Gyroscope, Rattle, Sheila Na Gig, One Art, Vox Populi, The Writer's Almanac, Lyric Life, and anthologies, including The Poetry of Presence, Volumes 1 and 2, both of which I love and I highly recommend, and I love to send people links constantly to those anthologies. The Path to Kindness, The Wonder of Small Things, both of which I also love and link to a lot. Those are James Cruz anthologies. And I Thought I Heard a Cardinal Sing, which is from Sheila Na Gig, and I'm a huge fan of that anthology as well. And I believe that multiple of our featured readers, have been in that anthology. Donna is the author of many poetry collections. Her work is the subject of a short film entitled Grief Becomes Me. Donna writes and teaches private workshops in Long Beach, California, and there are a number of links that I will put in the chat so you can learn a bit more about Donna's work and the anthologies that I mentioned. Off to Donna.
I mute myself. What a pleasure to be here at the very first One Art reading. I'm sort of choked up. Finding the perfect editor is sort of like falling in love. I knew from the first time when I started reading One Art, I thought, this is where I want to be. I just immediately, from the logo on, I was in love. What I'm reading today, all but two of the poems have been in One Art, and all but one of the poems is from my forthcoming book, Enormous Blue Umbrella. So I will begin. Passage at 19. I hold you to my breast for the slow ride home through falling snow. Flesh of my flesh, I am reborn dancing in terror and joy, balanced on the eyelash of a blinking God. Enormous blue umbrella. Enormous, sad and blue, this umbrella we walk beneath. It's winter still, but who could tell, with skies so poignant blue, it stings the eye, and merely a tinge of cold informs the air. Passers-by don't seem to notice the mount's sharp outline beyond the bayside homes. And across the boulevard, across the sand, beyond the stranded ships, Catalina shines like tinfoil. It's the walkers I wonder about. Sad faces, our caps pulled down, moving fast, no place special to go, so fierce to get there. Iris in the mind. I so anticipate the iris bloom, I think I see one from the window of the room where I sit writing. I go outside to check and find only reflection on a rock. The iris will rise and fall in its own time, and I settle the iris in my mind. Homes are sticking together. Iron skillet. I'm cleaning you now with coarse salt and a paper towel. Skillet of my mother, grandmother, and her mother before her. You've fried chickens, raised, killed, plucked, dressed on farms, in backyards by generation of women whose children watched in fascination and fear. You fried bacon, eggs over easy, baked cornbread, baked biscuits, grilled sandwiches, fried fold-over pies for farmers, mechanics, civil servants, teachers. Last night, I blackened a sea bass on your flat belly, where tonight potatoes and carrots will nestle and roast while an omelet browns on top of the stove. Skillet, trusty instrument of nurture, I praise your amazing utility, plurality of purpose, example of endurance, how easily you fashion meal after meal, serve us, feed us, reseason, restore. William Stafford has said that the best poems arise from our daily life. I hope he's right because it's the only kind of life I've got. And I'm, mostly walking, cooking, just, regular stuff. And it's the regular stuff I like. Thursday, Dave the Bay. I hear 76 trombones coming up behind me, and I know it's Dave with his little dog and a bag of scones from a nearby bakery. Dave turns his tinny transistor off and says, "I'm sorry," showing me his empty bag. "Late for my walk," I say. "Next Thursday," Dave says, marching on. I go back to watching two green herons perched on neighboring boats, facing one another, still as stone. More regular days. Good start. A good start to a regular day is pulling into Gelson's parking lot when the store opens at 7. "It's my favorite time too," the young clerk says, "because this early, nobody's mad. Muffins are fresh and warm from the oven, shelves neat, laden with promise, produce glistens like straight from the garden. And for once, hallelujah, there's a bin of organic potatoes, nary a spud with an eye." I'm always after the produce department to get organic potatoes because, you know, it's a crop that needs to be organic. Finally, they're listening. Okay, I've only missed 2 readings in my many, many years of giving readings. One time I dropped a fish into hot oil the night before I was supposed to read. And I knew there was damage, but I had a regular doctor's appointment the next day. And my doctor called the burn center immediately. And then I said, but I have a reading tonight. And he said, you can't leave the house looking like that. So I didn't go because apparently I looked even worse than I thought. The second time is the subject of this poem. I had a reading that night. I didn't go. And this one's from Threnody. 7th game of the World Series, and I have a 1-day breakdown. How about them Dodgers? Your rhetorical change-up from politics or personal line drive to the gut. Why won't you say you love me? Why don't you call your mother? My questions, then your question. How about them Dodgers? We don't talk about the ways our parents fouled us, or worse, strikeout after strikeout of our own. See the ball, hit the ball, you taught our children. Lesson enough, I wonder. But oh, those hot dog and peanut eating evenings, the cotton candy sky dissolving to deep blue, us in the stadium with our crew, spring, summer, sometimes fall. See the ball, hit the ball. How about them Dodgers? Think they'll make it to the fall? I'm told that's what you were saying when you biked into the sunrise, when the errant driver didn't see you, didn't see that he would hit you. End your season in the summer. How about them Dodgers? So since the Dodgers are, in the fall, I had to read that for my husband. This boat for Tori. Were you 2 or 3? Strapped to my lap in the kayak, I paddled into the wetlands, past the sign that read, "Go back." Herons, pelicans, cormorants flew close enough to touch. The sun dazzled the murk below. In this boat, we can go anywhere, you said, and pressed your cheek to my breast and slept. You were almost grown when you chose the unknown water. If there were signs ahead, I failed to heed or even see them. Okay. The weight. I awakened to your hand holding mine, you on the floor by the bed, the morning after I said, we are through. Your tender vigil coaxed the buds of love to sprout again after the dormant season when I had ceased belief in anything but grief. I just have to stop here and say I used to be funny, but not so much anymore. whatever. Ribolita. I praise the way you save stale bread left on the shelf too long. Rinds of Parmesan, tough to grate, old greens not crisp enough for salad, but fine for soup, reboiled from what's on hand. I love the way you salvage bruised tomato, sprouting onion, imperfect squash, laying no morsel to mold, nothing to waste, filling each space with aroma of soup, saying, supper, manja, come eat, come safely, come home. Okay. Down to the last two. Okay. Opening. They capture light, my neighbor says, of his many angled windows, fronting water on the bayside shore. Who wouldn't want to capture light? The way a child traps fireflies on a summer night. In the waning dark, I catch what I can with my cell phone's eager eye and greet again the great window opening. I need to duck down and get a sip of water because this is a longer one. So my I remember Mark saying, wow, this is a long poem when I send it to him. Because normally I don't write long poems. More. I want more pages in my day planner with its tidy squares and room on the side for to-dos to be checked off. And I want that list to never end. I want one page after another and another to appear in unending supply, the way peanut butter jars appear in the cupboard, and I'm aghast at their number and know you've been to that big box store once again. So it takes me forever to find the tiny jar of saffron stuck in the back. I want more dreams of falling, for the joyful relief at awakening from the chasm of sleep to consult my day planner and tick off more tasks that annoy me. I want more days to gripe in my mind about tiny hillocks of crumbs you've left on the counter while slicing bread from Gusto's on 4th Street, bought in such quantity and stuffed in the freezer that I can't find my tiny pint of mint chip ice cream. Then the drip drop of red wine, the drip drop of tomato from the salad you made for me last night. I want more of that on the counter. I want more mornings when your heavy breathing wakens me from sleep, when your 5-pillow chateau threatens to topple and smother me, and I get up with the sun and head out for my walk, when the glorious unfolding of the day is waiting. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Donna. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for publishing almost all those poems.
It's my pleasure, and I love hearing you read them aloud. Now you have me thinking about concerns regarding the dirty dozen of produce that people talk about. Um, I don't know, just thinking about your poems. I really love, the little moments on walks. Of course, the herons, make many appearances. And the challenge, that you rise to over and over of just really making the quotidian shine. And I think it's hard to say how how someone succeeds in doing that over and over again, but I think it does have something to do with, your pacing and cadence, and it really matches the tone and the content, and it really, allows for achieving that just right effect that you pull off.
Well, that's so kind of you to say. I really appreciate it. I
Well,
appreciate it so much.
we appreciate you, Donna. Thank you.
Gonna make me cry.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll stop before
Oh no,
that
don't stop.
happens. So that was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so
And
much.
oh, you're welcome, Donna. Thank you. So our next featured reader is Bonnie Proudfoot. Bonnie's fiction, poetry, reviews, and essays have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies. Her novel Goshen Road from Swallow received, I don't know if it's WCONA or YCONA's Book of the Year, and was longlisted for the pen Hemingway. Her poetry chapbook, Household Gods, can be found on Sheila Na Gig editions, along with her forthcoming book of short stories, Camp Probable. She resides in Athens, Ohio, and I will put a couple links in the chat to learn more about Bonnie and where you can find her books. Thank you, Bonnie, for being with us.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Donna. It's so wonderful to hear those poems, most of which I read in One Art, in your voice. Just fantastic. So thanks, Mark and Louisa, for inviting me. Thanks, everyone, for zooming in. And I can't tell you what an honor it is to be featured with the two other poets whose work I admire so much. And I just want to say I love subscribing to One Art also. And we all, a poem comes along you never would have seen before by a poet maybe you know or maybe you don't know. And that makes my day every morning. So I just had to add that. Also, I just wanted to say that, sometimes I'll send several poems to One Art and they'll pick one. And I'm not always sure exactly why they, Mark or Louisa picked that poem. But then, going back over the years, it seems like there's a certain staying power or a resonance in that poem that maybe I didn't see. And I think that's what curation is all about. So I just want to say thanks again. Okay, so I'll read a few poems, and I'm going to start with a poem that wasn't published in One Art, but I couldn't resist reading it because it is evening before Yom Kippur, and it's a Yom Kippur poem, so I thought, why not read this one? And it's called Sweet Forgiveness. All day in temple, we listened to the rabbi intone in Hebrew, his voice a dedicated monotone, broken mostly by standing, sitting, then standing. Each time my father's hand on my shoulder, his stomach grumbling next to me. Hopefully God wasn't noticing me, noticing my dad's bad breath, and the fact that he was just kind of mumbling along, didn't seem to know the words to the prayers, and we were fasting to atone, to intentionally supposed to apologize to others we needed to seek forgiveness from. And I know sometimes I didn't include my little brother, but come on. Or I did not offer to set the table, get my nose out of a book, and get up and help of my own accord, think of my poor mother on her feet all day. And the cantor sang so rich and deep, a voice that sounded like, well, pot roast with gravy. And then the shofar rang out, held us in a power so great it felt like dark giving way to light. And finally, home, where the table had already been set like an act of forgiveness. Food with incantatory names, kreplach, schmaltz herring, challah. None of this food, like sweet forgiveness itself, could ever be bought. It had to be touched by the hands of those who cared for us, served when it was most needed, waited for, earned. So that's my Yom Kippur memory poem. This next poem, I sort of started thinking about arranging, and I sometimes I look back at a certain chapter of my life, and then it's almost as if I am back in that moment. And this poem certainly happened like that. I went away to college in the 1970s, and this poem appeared in one art. It's called Grist. And if you're my age, you'll recognize some of the names mentioned. I didn't know where I was going, but I went along, because who was out there to keep me from this adventure? And why shouldn't we? Just to see if we could. We started at midnight behind a dorm, headed into a maintenance building, found a dimly lit concrete stairwell, crossed a semi-flooded hallway lit only by our flashlights, and another stairwell appeared. Up we climbed, then slipped through an ancient oak door, and we were in the back of the rare books collection in Lockwood Memorial Library. Padded leather armchairs, first editions of Joyce, Steinbeck, folios of Whitman, Shakespeare, and us. Not an alarm or guard in sight. We touched what we could, left books on couches, then slipped back downstairs into more tunnels toward the student union, the bookstore next door. No doors locked there. The Norton Anthology, Riverside Shakespeare, text I had just bought, stacked on shelves, as if for free. No one to tell us where not to be, what not to see. And isn't that what Ram Dass meant by grist for the mill? Someone had a can of spray paint, someone kept guard. Soon flowers and peace signs blossomed on block walls, and who knows if anyone ever saw those, but for all time and for almighty glee, we signed it, Nobody, 1972. So that was called tunnel trucking, which we did when we were misbehaving and freshmen in college. One other poem that I wrote very recently that harks back to that same part of my life is a poem called Elegy for Dewey Stone. You'll see some, again, a little memorabilia of the 1970s in this poem. Last May, Dewey died from diabetes after a slide into dementia. Not fully, just enough to lose nouns, verbs, to ache with the loss. Did I mention his name was not really Dewey? That once, hitchhiking from Buffalo to Woodstock, someone named Louie picked him up, and in the car was another guy named Huey. "I'm Dewey," he said, and then he was. We rolled joints on album jackets, listened to Santana, and watched cartoons. He sang, "I Got a Black Magic Marker." Did I mention that once when he was away, while I was watching his husky, she darted across the road into an oncoming car? I held her broken body, watched her blue eyes go blank. Didn't Roadrunner take a magic marker out of his invisible pocket and draw a tunnel into a mountain? Is that where the dog is? Are they together with their shining blue eyes? Does he still stop on the sidewalk every time a girl says, "Beautiful dog"? Does he say, "Yes, I know, her name is Yahweh"? I still listen to Santana. If I had a black magic marker, I could block out a portal through time and gravity, someplace between 11:30 and midnight. He called from the hospital. "It's fucked up," Dewey said. "I cry a little every day." I never asked whether he forgave me for killing his dog. I never wanted to hear him say he did. Did I mention how much we used to laugh? So maybe someone out there knew Dewey Stone. You probably maybe knew somebody like Dewey Stone anyway. Did I mention his real name was Michael Shapiro? I probably didn't. That didn't need to be in the poem. I'm just telling that to you guys, in case you did know him. Okay. And so Moving forward kind of in time, and I live in Athens, Ohio, and I have to say how much I live on a ridge top, and we're very vulnerable to weather. Everybody's vulnerable to weather. I think all the time about Asheville, that beautiful city, and all the wonderful people, Boone, North Carolina, Johnson City, North Carolina, and what they are dealing with. This poem maybe anticipates that a little bit, and it also appeared in one art. It's called "The Question Is Still the Wind." And the title comes from an Ada Limon poem, and she has a line, "The thesis is the wind." Her poem was called "Where the Circles Overlap." The question is still the wind, and will branches hold or limbs fall, and or will branches hold or limbs fall where they will, and will outer branches swirl in circles, shake like a skirt, and then how hard will each blast blow across the highest part of the atmosphere, twirling the treetops, and how much the highest branches will sway, whether more or fewer leaves can buffer, whether thin or thicker trunks can bear the strain. And will we hear that terrible sound, like drumming and hoofbeats and howls of a wounded creature, or the sharp gunshot cracking of a thick trunk or trunks splitting, then toppling, crushing brush, raw wood gaping? And maybe it all depends upon whether roots have found their way deep enough into the earth. Or maybe it's a mystery whether substrate below topsoil is shallow or deep, the ground below clay or silt or sand, and the question is still the wind, and lately it seems to blow stronger and last longer. And should those trees that you love really be so close to your house? But what is the other option? A bare lawn? Every yard a golf course? Ride around in your electric scooter, only a canvas top for shade? That's a dark meditation, I think, really. But we're so vulnerable, right? I mean, I don't know what makes a tree topple, but I've seen them, and it's not a pretty sight. Okay, this is going to cheer us up a little bit more, this poem, and I have about two more, and both of these appeared in one art at various times. I have a blog, by the way, and anytime a poem appears anywhere, including one art, I put a link to it in my blog. So if you'd like to see some of my other poetry, you can try bonnieproudfoot.com or my WordPress site. bonnieproudfoot.com is an old site that I keep trying to get site forwarded to my new site, and sometimes GoDaddy allows me to do it, and sometimes they block it, so then I have to go back in and forward it again, but it's easy to remember anyway. So this is called Flight. And I wrote it in the airport, by the way. It was one of those times I made it to the bus to the airport in plenty of time. One of those flights that felt like it might also be on time, my love. The gate boarding going as well as it could, checking boarding passes, ping, ping, squeezing a suitcase into an overhead, squeezing my butt into seat B. All this a regular wait, but not too heavy. But then the wait begins, rain delays on the runway, a sudden feeling that home is farther than ever, as if the present I live through might not lead to the future I imagine. The mask digging into my ears, the air darkening outside, then finally lifting off, rising into deeper darkness, the long droning slog through the air, then landing, glint of rain, dim fog settling as the highway narrows, the scratch of windshield wipers interminable, the gauntlet of deer mostly still as statues. Then home, the house dark, except for odd little digital dials. It's way past 4 a.m. now. Even the pets are groggy, and you're sleeping so soundly, but your arms open. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I release the weight of being who I imagine that everyone needs me to be. I lie down beside you, the air just beginning to glow, doves starting to call the dawn, and now, my love, I'm so light I could fly. Oh, thanks. Okay, here's my final poem, and it's kind of like a little riff on poetry and where it all comes from. It's self explanatory. A poem walked down the street. A poem walked down the street, checking doorways and alleys to see what it could see. It took off its headphones and heard what everyone was listening to. It bought the news and read the headlines. It watched a falcon land on the ledge of a skyscraper and the steel grate rise on the bodega. It waited for its life to start. The poem went to the doctor for heartburn. The MRI showed that it was pregnant with other poems who were pregnant with other poems, that the poem's ovaries held so many possible poems that when the poem laughed or hiccuped, they bumped into each other and couldn't wait to be born. The poem picked up an axe and felt the handle in its hand. It ran its thumb along the beveled edge. The poem felt purposeful, like it was ready to get to work, to split something apart, like it was ready to view the core once that thing was split, to grieve for the thing it had broken. Stop me if you heard this one. A poem walked into a bar, asked for a shot and a beer. The bartender said, "Sure, coming right up." But the poem backed away, thinking that was too easy, that this somehow should have been harder. The poem pulled out a quarter, set it on the pool table. It took a few practice breaks. Sometimes a ball landed in a pocket. The poem opened its heart. Goldfinches flew out. The jukebox danced in the corner. Thank you, folks. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Bonnie. That was wonderful. I love that you ended on that poem. And it's, oh my goodness. I feel like part of what's great about that poem is it's the sort of poem that everyone says you're not allowed to write. And certainly that like no one would get published because, it's on poetry and it's very meta. And there's a lot of humor, but your use of humor is so effective that you make it work. So it's very special that you're able to make that so effective. Um, a few other thoughts. There are so many heart-wrenching poems early in your reading, and I was thinking about the way you use weight in poems, and it reminds me of what people talk about in the way that comedy functions, where there's like this tension and release, and just the way that you do that is just extremely powerful and effective. Um, Also, I wanted to thank you for saying what you did about One Art's curation. If I heard you right, that going back to those poems that we've selected for publication ending up being the kind of poems that you felt had lasting power. Um, and also, oh, sorry, did you want to respond? Okay. Um, and also I can't resist since Ada came up in conversation. Whenever this happens, I have to take the opportunity to say that Ada Limon becoming poet laureate is something that was quite literally on my bucket list. And I did not think that it was something that would happen so quickly. And it was very exciting, and I just remain delighted about this. Because I knew she was going to get to that level. I just didn't know when they would, let her have the position. Um, but back to Bonnie. That was wonderful, Bonnie.
I
And
just want to say
thank you so
thanks.
much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you. That was exceptional. Um, and thank you again to everyone for being here. And for our final reader, I'm going to introduce Tamara Madison. Tamara is the author of 3 full-length volumes of poetry, Wild Domestic, Moraine, both of which are from Pearl Editions, Morpheus Dips His Oar, Sheila Na Gig Editions, and 2 chapbooks, The Belly Remembers, Pearl Editions, and Along the Fault Line, Picture Show Press. Her work has appeared in Chiron Review, Your Daily Poem, The Writer's Almanac, Sheila Na Gig, Worcester Review, or perhaps Worcester, depending on where it's located and who says it. And of course, One Art. And I will put a few links in the chat with info about Tamara and her poems. Thank you, Tamara, for being with us.
Well, thank you, Mark, for having me. It's such an honor. I'm excited about this. And I've kind of been, well, never mind. I'll just start reading. Okay, this is a hurricane poem. It's called Surprise Gift. Someone else's hurricane became our wind and rain. It soaked the thirsty garden, pitched heaps of leaves from roof to eave. This morning, the air is warm and close. Some days, I feel tired already of the future. Wonder how I'll manage the rest of the march. A ribbon of cool glides across my ankles, redolent of moist dirt, damp leaves, sage. I lace my shoes, join dark streets wet with rain, seek pleasure in the spoils of someone else's hurricane. You know, it's awfully dry in California. Wow. But I'm going to read some of my poems that have appeared in One Art. And this is a letter to Earth. I know you suffer. It's an old story. But I believe the day will come when your rivers will run pure again, when your seas will be clean and dazzled with fish. Nights will be black again and crackle with starlight. For every living thing that went extinct, new ones will take their place. In your marrow, the memory of us will turn again to carbon and remain there, finally harmless. Air will flow sweet around the trunks of trees. Waterfalls will pound the river rocks, and the sky will fill with insects and birds, wild and loud. This is called One Thanksgiving. It's from last year. It appeared on my son's birthday, November 24th. My daughter, I know, will not be coming all the way from school in New York. Then my son says he'll spend the day with his girlfriend's folks. He can't make the long drive down for our favorite holiday. I say to myself, they hurt you when they enter this world. They hurt you again as they leave your side. I take my solitary self in hand, invite some lonely friends, and plan. So strange without my daughter's kitchen skills, my boys' toasts and cheer and help. I make the meal myself this time. I even make the pies. The friends arrive, the wine is opened. We gather around the golden bird, beets glistening on a bed of garlic-studded greens. The cranberry sauce I always make with marmalade and lemon zest. The moment I set the last dish down, the front door opens and my lad walks in with his love on his arm. My astonished face, my friends will tell me later, the embodiment of Thanksgiving. Staying with my sister. My sister's husband says they can't go out to dinner anymore. There's nothing to talk about. He asks me to stay with her while he goes to a conference. I'm glad for the change of scene and to be with my big sister who has shown me so much love all my life. I take her to a restaurant. There's plenty to talk about. The menu, other diners, our parents. My sister used to love to cook. Now I'm the one making meals. She wants to help, asks if she should peel the garlic. Sure, I tell her, not thinking, as her husband might, of the perils of the paring knife. I busy myself with the rest of the meal. When I turn back, I see she has peeled both whole knobs. The cloves cluster like a trove of pearls. Here's another about something edible. Blueberry. They say there is no blue food. Is the blueberry not blue? It is navy, yes. And navy is a kind of blue. True, inside the berry is green, like the churning surf, green as the newest leaf, and at its base, a puckered crown, a navel, a monument to the fallen flower. At the crown where a stem once grew, there's a firm and plucky mark, brave scar, proudly won, badge of independence, of readiness to face the world alone, a will to be eaten. And this one, drawer, from UCSB, 1973. A few days after the seduction, he decides to talk to me. He asks me to go to the clinic. Make sure there is no growth, he says. Now I am looking up at the light. My knees are spread, and two women sit at the foot of my table. They carry on a lively conversation as they work. I'm not listening. I feel the warm light on my newly wakened nether world, and the women begin to search inside me, as in a drawer. I imagine them pulling things out, bottle caps, old tires, tampons, of course, lipstick tubes, wrappers, leaves, a shred from 17 magazine. But I'm not so old, I want to protest. I've barely begun my collection. You're fine, they tell me, and hand me a prescription to make me bleed. Outside, it's raining. I sit in French class, staring out at the rows of eucalyptus dripping in their ragged bark, at the stream of bicycles hissing on the wet path. I watch him round the corner, as always at this time. Brown bike, violin tucked under his arm, beard trimmed. Too old to be a student. And here's another one about loss litany. When did you lose your filter? A colleague asked that year before my retirement, when I couldn't handle another senseless staff meeting. When did you lose your virginity? A student asked, as though it were her business. But I told the truth, so she'd know it doesn't have to happen in high school. When did you lose your father? A new friend asks, and suddenly I feel remiss, as though I should have kept better track of him. The doctor wanted to know how. How did I lose the IUD? Did it fall out on the street? He actually asked, until it turned up on the X-ray, half sunk in the wall of my womb. I still wonder how I lost that diamond earring, the one generous gift a lover gave me on a whim. Its mate reclines now on a black velvet bier in the gift box it came in. And how did I lose that friend from college, the one I reconnected with in 2 different cities before he vanished into some far place where emails are read but not returned? Of all of these, it's the coffin-shaped fake ruby from the ring my mother wore until she gave it to me when I turned 12, that I wonder most about. The empty setting, the silver filigree, rolls around every time I open the drawer, where I keep orphaned earrings and gifts I haven't the heart to return. I remember it on her strong brown finger, and how it skewed to the right on my own. How my sister, in the throes of dementia, used to stare at it, asking, "Mother?" And this one, faith. You either have it or you don't. Sometimes it's given and you wear it like an amulet. Sometimes imposed and you bear it like a yoke. Sometimes it's just a name you repeat, 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 working to make it part of you. You take it in the way a tree accepts and grows around a nail. For some, it's embodied in a wafer, a set of beads, a sheaf of onion skin pages in a handed-down book, a scroll affixed to a doorframe. For some, an elusive spirit that vanishes as they draw near. They spend their lives in the search. I've lived this long without religion, yet I breathe faith every morning when the sun rises. It carries me through the days, a current bearing onward toward night, where I drift in my heart's canoe along black water. And I'd like to read one more. Well, two more, if I may. This one is going to be in one art soon, I believe. It's called, well, no. What did I do with that one? Whoops. It's called The Muse Commands. I read it to you in advance. We stop at the end of the pier where the full moon spreads its path across the sea. Our little son gasps at the sight, claps his hands, looks up at us, and says in a voice that is like a swoon, "I want to draw that. I have to draw that now." I know the feeling. We hurry to the market before it closes, buy the only art supplies there. Back at the hotel, he sets to work, pink tongue peeking from the corner of his mouth. But crayons and rough paper are not enough to capture his sense of it, the way the moon stroked the water like a mother. And I remember the time my brother found me writing and insisted I share my poem with him. Who could be closer to you than me, your own brother? Because he was older, I handed it over. He read it silently, then left the room. I read it again, but the feeling was gone. And if you don't mind, I'd like to end up with an old one. I was just talking about watches today with a friend. So I'm going to end with this one. It's one from my very first book, Wild Domestic. It's called Analog Time. Things have changed since then because we didn't even have smart watches then, but still works. Analog Time. Your new watch can tell what time it is right down to the second, the split second. Your new watch has no face. Instead, there's a blinking grill where the numbers change constantly. I would like to say that in this rapid split-second parade, we can see the flow of time, always changing, never changing, a river slipping over rocks and sand, but it's only time, a human concept, after all, not a real river. Your new watch honors each second by giving it its own number, which tumbles swiftly away, anchoring us, if we let it, in now. Still, I prefer the grace of the analog clock, with its face, its hands, where every moment is linked to those around it. Each moment has a history and a future, where it's 10 past the hour, half past, a quarter till, 5 of, as though each moment were truly part of a fluid whole. But in fact, the real tellers of time are the sun, the sky, the wrinkles on our faces, bruises on our souls. Thank you, everybody. And thanks again, Mark and Louisa. It's nice to see so many sweet faces. You guys are wonderful.
Thank you so much, Tamara. That was amazing. Thank you to all three of our readers. Just a few words about Tamara's reading. Really, a lot comes to mind. I was initially just thinking how you have this wonderful, just lulling reading style, and it's just a joy to listen to you reading your work in your own voice. And also that your poems really highlight the power of storytelling, of strong narratives as driving forces in poems. The way that these stories are just so powerful and urgent and intimate. And there are so many moments of surprise, both unexpected diction as well as the turns in the poems, and just a great joy to listen to you read your work. So thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you to everyone for being here. I was reminded to do this. Well, first, let me put a link in the chat for One Art's YouTube channel, because this is going to be posted in the future on there. So that will be active. And I can find a link. Just for future reference. I know many of you already did donate, but I'm putting a link for donations in the chat. And I'd also like to mention, I can put links for this too, our upcoming workshops. So I'm pleased to say that One Art's going to have our second workshop with the wonderful Ellen Rowland. This is going to be the music of the line, rhythm, rhyme, and repetition in poetry. And it'll be limited to 15 participants. I think I might, I honestly might be getting that wrong. It may be an ekphrastic workshop, and I'll have to check back. That might be my error. In any case, we're also going to be having an upcoming workshop with nature poet Grant Clouser in December. That one's called Weird Up Your Language, which should be fun. And then I'm not going to totally spoil the full list of upcoming readers, but we are going to have our next featured reading on October 27th, Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And that's going to be a bit fun and quirky with maybe a bit of the old Halloween spirit. And the featured poets for that reading will be Ace Bodgis, CL, Courtney Bledsoe, Anton Yakovlev, and Jason Gordy Walker. I can put a link in the chat, and that'll be on the website as well. So thank you again for everyone for joining us this evening, and I really hope to see you all again at future readings and events. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a good evening.